A few months back, I had a summer job babysitting my 7-year-old cousin named Chloe. Their 90-year-old grandma lived with them for 20 years before she died in April of 2016. So, Chloe's mother asked me to watch her every day over the summer from 6:30 in the morning until 5 that afternoon. My paranormal experience began in mid-June, 2 months after their grandmother had died of heart failure. I was helping Chloe clean up her old room and moving her things into her new one, which was her grandmother's old room. As I was picking up things and putting them into a laundry basket, I opened her walk-in closet and found a cross sitting on the ground. I didn't think much of it because Chloe's family was religious. I picked it up and stared at it for a few moments before Chloe took it from my hands. She turned the cross upside down and put it back in my hands.
That's how you hold it. I use this when I want to talk to Grandma before bed. I say nothing as I walk away to her new room. She followed behind me and jumped on her bed when she entered her new room. I sat the basket down and knelt down in front of her. I grabbed onto her shoulders and made her look at me. I went on to explain that her grandmother was in heaven and she couldn't possibly be talking to her. This was really hard to explain to a 7-year-old. As I was explaining, I felt a chill run down my spine and Chloe looked past me at something else. When I finished what I was saying, she pointed behind me. Well, if Grandma's in heaven, why is she staring at you in the hallway? My stomach flopped as I turned to see nothing. Chloe smiled and laughed a few seconds later, exclaiming that Grandma was making silly faces and gestures towards me. I left early that day when her brother came home from a friend's house. A week had passed without another incident, but I occasionally could feel a chill and eyes staring me down. Things started to get knocked off the counters, and the dog would sit and stare at their grandmother's old rocking chair. Weird things kept happening, and Chloe would say some pretty scary things. But the scariest thing that ever happened my entire time working for my aunt was late in July. I was staying at my aunt's for the weekend when this occurred. That afternoon, before her parents came home, Chloe was in the downstairs part of their house coloring in her notebook. I was cleaning up a mess when she stopped coloring and stared at the curtain that covered the laundry room. She stared for a few moments before saying, "Grandma's in the laundry room. She wants me to come to her, but she looks mad. I don't want to go in there." She began to cry, and I brought her upstairs where I made her lunch and put on some cartoons for her to watch. Nothing else occurred until later that night. It was 2 a.m. when I was with Chloe's brother and his friend. We sat in his room and watched scary videos on YouTube. I heard faint cries coming from outside his door. The video was paused, and we opened the door to investigate. The curtain from the laundry room moved, and Chloe slowly walked out, glaring at the 3 of us sitting in the doorway of her brother's room. As she stared at us, she spoke in a quiet yet angry voice. "Grandma's not happy with you." She then began to lash out, breaking things, and she even tried attacking us. Her mother heard everything, and she took Chloe upstairs for the rest of the night to sleep with her. The next morning, I asked Chloe about the event that had taken place, and she told me she couldn't remember anything that happened last night except for one thing. Grandma said goodbye, but she left her friend behind. He's really tall, and he's really dark, and he also kinda scares me. I have never been inside that house since after that day. This event took place in 2008 during the summer. I was staying at my friend's house for a week while my parents went on a second honeymoon for their 20th wedding anniversary. We were 12 and 14 at the time, my friend being 2 years older than me. We spent the first 2 days watching Ghost Adventures on TV. This show was our favorite, and we would watch it every time we got together. The third night, my friend, let's call her Jill, suggested something that the 2 of us would consider a paranormal adventure. "Let's go ghost hunting. We can record things, and I have this app on my phone that can help us communicate with ghosts and hear them." It didn't take much convincing. I was in the second the words ghost hunting left her mouth. We strapped on our shoes and waited for her parents to go to sleep for the night before going. We planned what we were going to do, who was going to be the cameraman, and where we were going to go. The old school isn't far from here, maybe 4 or 5 blocks. We can go there and see what we can get. In our town, there is a school that hasn't been used in over a decade. We didn't realize it at the time, but we could have gotten into some serious trouble if we got caught. This was trespassing. We filmed inside the school through the windows, trying to find something that could be considered freaky. We didn't realize we actually got something until a few days later. Jill was deleting the videos from her phone, and she stopped on a video of the main hallway. In this video, there was nothing, but in the far left corner, there is something that looks like a person floating in the air. We continued to watch, and the floating person disappeared just 5 seconds before the video ends. This freaked us out big time, and we had no explanation for it. We couldn't show anyone or tell anybody about it because we would have gotten into trouble for sneaking out and trespassing on private property. The phone with the video on it is long gone, but man, I would love to be able to show it to my friends when I tell them the story. In October of 2016, my boyfriend and I were driving around town, basically doing nothing until the sun set. When the sun went down, we worked together at a haunted house in our hometown. We dressed as monsters and crawled through the walls at guests. While we were driving around, my eyes caught a glimpse of this figure sitting in the field. Standing about 20 feet off from the road was a little boy. At least, that's what I thought it was. I looked away for a few seconds to answer a question that my boyfriend asked, and when I looked back at the field, the boy was gone. I thought it was my imagination playing tricks on me, and I blew it off. We went on with our night and worked our shifts and drove home around 2 a.m. It was foggy outside, and we could barely see the road as he drove us home. As we drove, that same small figure appeared in front of our car. My boyfriend swerved, but it disappeared before we hit it, whatever it was. He asked me if he was going crazy, and I told him no, and that I saw the figure a few hours before. We had no explanation for what happened that night. It left us shaken, and even thought about it being our heads messing with us. But how could we see the same thing just hours between one another if it was our heads?